Buckle up, because what you're about to see will challenge everything you thought you knew about our universe. Brace yourself for chilling encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, captured on camera and meticulously documented by credible witnesses. These aren't your average blurry lights or weather balloons. These are inexplicable events that defy our understanding of physics and technology, leaving even the most skeptical observers questioning our place in the cosmos.
Earlier this year, documents were declassified by United States Homeland Security outlining a secret project designated to identifying, acquiring, studying, and reverse engineering AAVs, aka Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. According to the Pentagon, the project never actually went ahead due to the fact that the government was unable to collect any kind of otherworldly spacecrafts. Sure. The document showed that the budget for the program was to be 12 to 15 million in the first year, 25 million in the second, and upwards of 50 million US dollars in the third. And the purpose of the project was to ensure national security by accessing and assessing the advanced technology and determining its threat capabilities. Furthermore, the document stated that another drive for the program was the United States' fear that either China or Russia had possibly already been able to reverse engineer these kind of technologies. Despite all of the information released to the public meticulously outlining the project, Homeland Security stands firm on their claim that the program never actually went ahead because it was never actually approved. Personally, I'm not buying it. It sounds more like a foreign enemy was getting too close to uncovering the mission, and so the government released a bogus declassified statement saying that while there was a project, it never actually went ahead, in order to throw them off the scent. If you agree, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Why not, you guys?
Project Sign. Project Sign was an early US military investigation into unidentified flying objects launched in 1948 after a surge in reported sightings. Everything really kicked off with the Kenneth Arnold sighting, followed by the Roswell incident, and then people were spotting UFOs all over the country. So it was time to investigate these reports and assess whether there was a real threat to national security, especially being that it was the Cold War, of course. The team included experts in astronomy, physics, and psychology, all tasked with analyzing UFO reports and data. Sign was a top secret for most of its operation, but in 1949 some of their findings went public and it was pretty intriguing. Basically, they concluded that a small percentage of UFO sightings couldn't be easily explained away by natural phenomena or known aircraft. So this led some members to hypothesize that UFOs might be of extraterrestrial origin. But right around this time, the project was shut down by General Hoyt Vandenberg, Chief of Staff of the Air Force. It was then replaced by Project Grudge, with a slightly different goal, but more on that in a bit. First, let's kick it over to Hannah.
A joint effort between the National Security Agency of the United States, aka the NSA, and the British intelligence agencies dedicated to training super soldiers in charge of UFO retrieval and security lockdown operations. I have to say, my interest is piqued. Project Mannequin, as it's called, was revealed to the public back in the 2000s by several whistleblowers who claim to have been a part of the project at one point or another. Now, while super soldiers in charge of subduing alien threats does sound pretty cool, unfortunately the recruitment process sounds pretty dark. Apparently agents don't just join the team of their own accord, instead hand over their offspring to the government at a young age for some kind of crazy undisclosed amount of money. According to whistleblower reports, the base for Project Mannequin is located in a top secret facility 60 meters underground in Berkshire in southern England, and this is where the soldiers are trained to become some of the most skilled individuals in the world. Now, because I already know you're going to ask, the most famous whistleblower of Project Mannequin was Max Spears, who, after leaking information regarding the project to the public, died under incredibly strange and unexplicable circumstances. Unexplicable as in one moment he sat down on his couch and the very next moment he was dead, and to this day no one knows how it happened, but he believed prior to his death that he was a sleeper agent that had been brainwashed by the government and was involuntarily part of this project. So who knows?
In 1949, Project Sign was replaced with Project Grudge. But now things were different. Their goal wasn't just to assess UFO reports and figure out if they were legitimate. Instead, the purpose was to downplay the presence of UFOs. At the time, the US government was worried that foreign governments could exploit UFO reports, basically causing panic in the public. So Grudge shifted its focus from scientific investigation to straight up debunking UFO reports and reassuring the public that there was nothing extraordinary about the sightings, even when there actually was. J. Allen Hynek, a famous American astronomer, professor, and UFOologist, took issue with Grudge, claiming that it was, quote, less science and more of a public relations campaign, which it was, at least on the surface. Just because they were telling the public UFO sightings were nothing more than balloons, meteors, or optical illusions doesn't mean they were doing research behind the scenes that they felt it best to cover up.
Project Moondust is officially described as a United States project dedicated to recovering the remains of Soviet satellites that re-entered the atmosphere and crashed down to Earth in not only the US but also South Africa, Bolivia, and even the Himalayan mountains. Unofficially, it is possible that the project is actually dedicated to something far more interesting. You know where I'm going with this. The collection and analysis of crashed UFOs. It is believed that while the US claimed to have been recovering satellites, they were actually collecting UFOs, which were then sent out to various military bases throughout the states. The entire thing was revealed by a man named Clifford Stone, who claimed to have been part of the project. Just before his death, he was quoted saying that the entire time the project was going on, they were telling the American public that it had nothing to do with aliens, when in reality, high clearance personnel who were not army officials would always be added to the mission last minute, and they would be the ones to claim ownership of whatever objects were recovered during the mission. These objects were then sent out for testing, analysis, and reverse engineering.
Project Magnet was Canada's government investigation into UFOs. It was launched in December of 1950 by Wilbert B. Smith, a senior radio engineer with the Canadian Department of Transport. Smith had a personal interest in UFOs and believed that they could be scientifically studied. So the main goal of the project was to attempt to figure out what these UFOs were, and if it was possible, they could be using Earth's magnetic field as a source of propulsion. The project involved setting up monitoring stations across Canada equipped with specialized equipment to detect and analyze magnetic and radio frequency disturbances. Smith hoped that by capturing data from these disturbances, they could find patterns and similarities with UFO sightings. Now, Wilbert Brockhouse Smith was an interesting guy. He did believe that UFOs were of extraterrestrial origin and had psychic abilities. He also believed that aliens were communicating to him through the use of telepathy.
Unbeknownst to some, the United States is not the only one with an Area 51 style top secret UFO alien base. That's right, Russia has their very own version of the not so secret alien bunker located in rural Siberia and referred to as Kapustin Yar. It makes sense. I mean, Russia was the first country to send a living being up to space back in 1957, so it's only natural that they would have some kind of corner on the market of UFO and alien artifacts. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the first living being in space was a dog named Laika, who unfortunately did not make it back down to Earth, but that's a sad, sad story for another day. While some of the non-believers might claim that Kapustin Yar is nothing more than a regular military base used for radar systems, satellite tracking, and low-level nuclear weapons testing, it should be noted that the Russian government didn't even acknowledge the base's existence until 1983, and furthermore, many former employees have claimed that while working on the base, they witnessed not only the reverse engineering of alien spacecrafts, but actual alien autopsies as well. And personally, I feel like this whole nuclear weapons testing thing has become such a popular way for secret military bases to keep people from getting too close. I mean, really, name a better deterrent than radiation poisoning. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to know if aliens exist as much as the next guy, but nothing is worth that. It's awful don't Google it.
Antarctica, yes, all of it. Antarctica has gained quite a reputation for being a hotspot for UFO sightings and theories about secret government bases dedicated to studying them. It's remote, inhospitable, makes for an ideal cover for secretive activities. Nobody really wants to go to Antarctica. It's desolate, the weather sucks. So not only would most people veer clear of it anyway, but makes it very difficult for ordinary people to access, allowing secretive operations to take place in secrecy. Some conspiracy theorists have pointed out images with unusual formations in the ice taken with satellites, which some people think could be entrances to underground military facilities and stuff like that. Some even believe there are pyramid-type structures there buried under the ice that might have been built by some ancient civilization, possibly with the help of extraterrestrials or just built by aliens entirely. The governments of the world, especially the United States and Russia, are said to have established secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology and artifacts.
A top-secret outpost located in the small town of Dulce, New Mexico, was apparently erected in the 1900s to monitor alien communication signals as well as other weird happenings that tend to come with the territory. According to locals living in the town, which has a population of about 2,700 people and not one single traffic light, alien signals were first intercepted in 1979. The following year, something strange happened. The bodies of dead animals began turning up all over town, mutilated in ways that one could not or would not want to explain. I will not be explaining because this is YouTube, not the dark web. In the years that followed, individuals who claimed to have been associated with the base, nicknamed the Dulce Alien Center, started coming forward. One man claimed to have helped build the facility and to even have witnessed a full-on battle between humans and alien beings. After that, UFO sightings in the town skyrocketed, probably because people now knew what to look for. Fast forward to today, and reports of UFO sightings are still pretty common in the small town of Dulce, as well as reports of top secret military projects, despite the fact that the government insists it has a total of 0 bases in the area. But who's buying that?
Majestic 12, often referred to simply as MJ12, is at the heart of pretty much everything we've talked about on this list. The organization is basically the king of government alien cover-up conspiracies. The story goes that in 1947, following the Roswell incident, where a supposed UFO crash occurred, President Truman established Majestic 12 as a secret committee of scientists, military leaders, and government officials whose mission was to investigate and cover up evidence of extraterrestrials. According to conspiracy theorists, MJ12's members included figures from the military, the scientific community, who would manage recovered alien technology, study it, possibly even operate on aliens. Documents about MJ12 allegedly leaked in 1985. UFOologists William Moore and Stanton Friedman claimed they'd been pointed to them by an anonymous whistleblower. One of the most disturbing chapters in the lore of MJ12, though, is their possible involvement in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Why? In order to prevent him from disclosing classified information about UFOs and aliens. Project Blue Book was an official investigation conducted by the United States Air Force from March of 1952 to December of 1969. It stemmed from similar projects, Sign and Project Grudge, but when Air Force generals leading those projects started getting fed up with how poorly UFO investigations were going, they wanted something more serious, and so Project Blue Book was born. Its main goal was to look into and analyze reports of unidentified flying objects to see if they posed any real threat to national security. This project came about during a time when UFO sightings were starting to become a lot more frequent, and people were genuinely scared at the time. I think today most people find the idea of spotting genuine UFOs and aliens kind of exciting, but the concept of aliens was relatively new at the time, or newer, and fear seemed to be the general vibe. Just look at all the alien invasion movies like War of the Worlds coming out at the time. The USAF decided to take a systematic approach to studying these sightings, attempting to separate reports that could be chalked up to natural phenomena from the cases that had no solid explanation. Project Blue Book collected over 12,000 reports of UFO sightings during its operation. The team working on it included scientists, military personnel, and other experts. By the time the project ended, most of the cases were explained, but a small percentage did remain unidentified. Cases that Project Blue Book investigated and their findings are cited in discussions about government secrecy when it comes to UFOs to this day. Project Blue Book had a very specific classification system, which was used to organize and analyze the thousands of UFO reports that the US Air Force was receiving. The system was important to help make sense of the data and determine which cases deserved some deeper investigation. The sightings were categorized into three main groups: identified, insufficient information, and unidentified. The identified category is pretty self-explanatory. These were sightings that could be easily explained. They usually turned out to be misidentified aircraft, weather balloons, other natural phenomena like lightning. The insufficient information category included cases where there wasn't enough data to make a solid judgment. Reports like this were sometimes incomplete or just lacking in detail, making it tough for them to draw any solid conclusions. And then you have the exciting category: unidentified. These were for cases that couldn't be explained. They made up a small percentage of the total reports, but that's not really surprising. People didn't know as much about what went on up in the sky then, and with the UFO craze at its peak, people were making a lot of reports that we'd probably never bother making today. Project Blue Book was first headed by United States Air Force officer Edward James Ruppelt. If Project Blue Book was a TV show, this first season was the best. Ruppelt seemed to have a genuine interest in actually uncovering the truth behind these UFO reports. Ruppelt was an experienced airman and had served in World War II. He was also responsible for coining the term unidentified flying object. Before that, they were just known as flying saucers. He'd made a lot of changes to how UFO reports were handled. He set out to reduce the stigma that often came with reporting a UFO, creating a standard questionnaire for UFO witnesses. This would also help gather data that could be analyzed statistically. Ruppelt took his job very seriously and expected the same from his team. He avoided speculation and made sure his staff didn't lean too heavily towards any single theory about UFOs. If anyone was too skeptical or too convinced, they were off the project. He also went to scientists for advice, issued regular press releases, and kept the military up to date with monthly reports. Some of the biggest cases during Ruppelt's time included the Lubbock Lights and a 1952 radar visual sighting over Washington, D.C. The scientific consultant for Blue Book was an astronomer named J. Allen Hynek. He'd been skeptical about the project at first, but he started to become more open to the idea of UFOs as he encountered more and more reports. More on him later. Ruppelt left Project Blue Book in February of 1953 for a temporary reassignment. When he returned, though, he found his team had been cut down significantly. He ended up losing faith in the project and left. His time with Project Blue Book is remembered as the last serious attempt by the Air Force to genuinely analyze UFO phenomena. 1953 is where things really started to go downhill, and a lot of that is thanks to the Robertson Panel. UFO sightings were on the rise, especially around Washington, D.C., so this led to a lot of attention and concern. So the CIA decided to set up a panel of scientists to look into it. This group, called the Robertson Panel, was led by H.P. Robertson, a physicist from the California Institute of Technology. The panel included physicists, meteorologists, engineers, and one astronomer, J. Allen Hynek. The Robertson panel first met on January 14th of 1953. They wanted to figure out how to handle the growing public interest in UFOs. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, Hynek, and others presented the best evidence they'd gathered. After 12 hours of reviewing 6 years worth of data, the panel concluded that most UFO sightings had simple explanations, and all could be explained with more investigation, which they didn't think was worth the effort. The panel believed that these unverifiable UFO reports were just clogging things up, risking the chance of missing a real threat to the United States. So they recommended that the Air Force downplay the importance of UFOs and start a full-on debunking campaign. They suggested using mass media, even getting Disney involved, and enlisting celebrities to treat the subject like a joke in order to make the whole subject seem less serious and interesting to the public. Then in December of '53, a regulation was put in place, making it a crime for military personnel to discuss classified UFO reports with unauthorized people. So this panel right here really shaped how UFOs and alien reports would be dealt with in the years to come. In March of 1954, Captain Charles Hardin took over Project Blue Book, and he basically treated his whole time there as a lunch break. He had very little interest in UFOs and was pretty hands-off. The previous head of the project, Edward James Ruppelt, really wasn't a fan of this guy, writing that Hardin, quote, thinks that anyone who is even interested in UFOs is crazy. They bore him. During this time, the number of reports deemed unidentified had dropped to less than 1%. During the Ruppelt era, this category made up about 20 to 25% of all reports. The debunking campaign was clearly in full effect here. Captain Hardin was mostly just disinterested in the whole thing, but Captain Gregory, who came next, he was even worse, in that he was actively setting out to downplay and discredit pretty much every UFO report he came across. Captain George T. Gregory took over Project Blue Book in 1956. They now wanted as few unidentified reports as possible, so they changed how they classified these sightings. Gregory's approach to this was pretty straightforward. He reclassified many of the UFO sightings to make them fit with more conventional explanations. For example, if a sighting was labeled as a possible comet, it was bumped up to a probable comet. And if a sighting had been previously labeled as a probable comet, well, that just became a definite 100% misidentified comet. This same method applied to other sightings, like balloons. If someone reported seeing a strange balloon-like object, Blue Book would just call it a balloon without doing much, if any, research. This tactic became standard practice into the later years of Blue Book. This wasn't cool. Even the scientific consultant for Blue Book, J. Allen Hynek, who I mentioned before, a guy that had been such a hard skeptic at first, even he thought this was wrong. Everything was looking pretty bleak. It seemed like Project Blue Book had jumped the shark, ratings were down, the show was on the verge of being cancelled. But then a new star of the show came along. Lieutenant Colonel Robert J. Friend took over Project Blue Book in 1958. Unlike Gregory, Friend tried to change things up and steer Blue Book back toward serious UFO investigations, but he faced a lot of challenges. There was a serious lack of funding and support. The higher-ups still wanted these things to be downplayed. But Hynek saw Friend as a breath of fresh air and rallied behind him. He organized a meeting in 1959 between Blue Book staff and personnel from the Air Technical Intelligence Center, or the ATIC. Or do people say ATIC? I imagine they say attic, but who knows? You tell me. Hynek figured it was time to reevaluate some older UFO reports, but these plans didn't go very far. During Friend's time, there were talks about moving Blue Book to another Air Force agency, but no one else wanted to take it on. In 1960, the US Congress held hearings about UFOs. The civilian UFO research group NICAP accused Blue Book of covering up UFO evidence and gained some allies in Congress. Because of this, Blue Book was investigated by Congress and the CIA, with folks saying they hadn't been doing what they were supposed to be doing, genuine scientific studies. Some more personnel were added, and Blue Book's budget was increased. Things looked like they were on the up and up, but it seemed like it had all been for show. By the time Friend left Blue Book in 1963, he'd become very disillusioned with the project. He figured it had become ineffective and should be dissolved. He tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter. He couldn't turn Project Blue Book into what it was in the glory days of Edward Ruppelt. After that, Major Hector Quintanilla took over and ran the whole project straight into the ground, fully embracing the debunking campaign that had been plaguing the project for years. Now, of course, there are endless conspiracies surrounding Project Blue Book and the project's handling of UFO cases, especially for the post-Ruppelt era, where the leaders seemed to be less open to the possibility of UFOs on the surface. Were they genuinely dismissive, Or were they hiding things? A lot of people who are into UFOs or just skeptical folks in general think that Project Blue Book dismissed credible UFO reports without proper investigation, and that they were trying to debunk rather than seriously study the possibility of UFO phenomena and aliens. When Project Blue Book ended in 1969, the Air Force made several statements about their findings over the years. They claimed that most UFO sightings could be explained by identifiable objects or natural phenomena. This included everything from weather balloons and aircraft to stars and clouds. They stated that these objects posed no threat to national security and that there was no evidence suggesting that any sightings were related to extraterrestrial beings or advanced technology beyond what was known at the time. Basically, their final report downplayed the possibility of UFOs being anything extraordinary. But as I said, not everyone was convinced, and there have been conspiracies ever since. So much of the discussions around government cover-ups when it comes to aliens and UFOs comes from Project Blue Book. Some former military personnel and insiders have come forward over the years claiming that there were cases of more detailed investigations and findings that were never made public. But why did Project Blue Book, especially in the later years, seem to have this agenda of dismissing the idea of extraterrestrials and downplaying credible reports? Well, aside from that whole clogging up the pipes thing that I mentioned earlier, most people will say it was to avoid panic in the public. Maybe the government thought and still think that we're just not ready to hear that there really are little green alien folk flying around our planet. Maybe the government is actually working with them, and to avoid public outrage, they're keeping it quiet. But there's another possibility that's a lot more depressing, so why don't we finish off with that? Some argue that Project Blue Book and projects similar to it that have followed in its footsteps are really just smokescreens designed to give the appearance of transparency while actually diverting our attention away from darker government activity. This is the thing none of us really want to believe. It's a lot less fun, but it is possible. As for what they could be hiding, you name it. Everything from testing of dangerous weapons to more conspiratorial stuff like weather control. There are all kinds of possibilities, and none of them are all that pleasant. But I like to think that there are aliens visiting Earth, that we're on the verge of an exciting new chapter in history. Hey, one can dream, right?
The first image is a screen grab from a video filmed by a US Marine officer on the 20th of April in 2021 on a military base in 29 Palms, California. After the release of the photograph, multiple Marines came forward to confirm the existence of an aircraft, saying that while the photo showcases only the triangle-shaped formation of bright lights, in person the men were able to make out the black body of the aircraft as well. The unidentified flying object is said to have hovered for 10 minutes in the air before it suddenly vanished without any trace. The men were able to rule out flares for being the cause of the mysterious lights, but were never able to figure out exactly what they saw that night. However, it appears the footage has not been taken lightly, as the Pentagon has started an investigation into just what exactly was seen on the night of April 20th of 2021 in the skies above the 29 Palms military base. Next up, we have a series of photographs taken by cosmonaut Ivan Vanger in August of 2020 whilst aboard the International Space Station that appears to depict 5 unidentified flying objects flying at the same speed while maintaining the same distance between each other as well as their surroundings, moving in a straight line just above the Earth's curved horizon visible in the night sky. Vangar, both surprised and curious, took to Twitter, now named X, to share the footage in hopes of getting some clarity as to exactly what he was looking at. In an exciting unfolding of events, his tweet was picked up by the Russian space agency Roscosmos, and a spokesperson revealed that experts were in fact studying the video in an attempt to determine what exactly Vangar had managed to capture. Did you guys know that Japan was a major hotbed for UFO activity? Because I didn't. But apparently the Pentagon does? In fact, UFO sightings are so common in Japan that its military has reportedly ordered all pilots to disclose any and all identified flying objects directly to the Japanese government. Not only that, but Japanese self-defense forces forces have also undergone extensive training in relation to UFO sighting protocol. To date, 6 alleged encounters between pilots and UFOs have been reported to the Japanese government, one of which was recorded, and depicts 10 white circular balls flying through the skies of Osaka in Japan. While the government has yet to publicly comment on any of the incidents, the update of self-defense protocol alone is pretty telling. The next image was shared by a pretty reputable source, National Geographic. The image was captured by Sergio Loaiza on September 4th of 1971 during an aerial survey of Lake Kote. Everything seemed pretty normal until the photos were taken back to Loaiza's development lab, where he noticed something very strange. A metallic flying aircraft, estimated to have a diameter of 160 feet, was located in the corner of one of the photographs. When he presented the photos to his superiors at the National Geographic Institute, they shut him down quick, forbidding Sergio as well as his colleagues from sharing any information of what they had seen that day. In 1979, however, the photograph was leaked, and the object that appeared in the image was officially classified as an unidentified flying object. In 2021, the existence of the object was again confirmed after the original copy of the photograph was scanned, and it was revealed that the UFO's presence was more than just a scratch on the lens or a piece of dust in the wind. So what do you think it was? Let us know in the comments. Next up, we have footage that comes to us straight from the declassifieds. Remember how I told you at the beginning of the video that the government quite literally copped to the fact that they have been hiding the existence of UFOs for years? Well, they did, and they came with receipts. On the 15th of January in 2023, while surveilling an MQ-9 Reaper aircraft, an unidentified aerial presence was captured moving at speeds unreachable by any of Earth's modern-day technological advances. Not only this, but as the object whizzed through the field of view of the camera lens, it appeared to leave behind an atmospheric wake before disappearing completely into the sky. Guys, if you have any, please leave your UFO and alien stories in the comments. I would love to hear about your experiences with any of these kind of things. Next up, we have arguably the most beautiful alien assuming photograph I have ever seen. The photo was taken in 2004 by a retired Royal Air Force officer while on vacation in Sri Lanka. The site was described as some kind of colorful giant donut in the sky with hues of oranges, pinks, purples, and whites. After its capture, the photograph was turned into the Royal Air Force Flying Dales Base in North Yorkshire in England, where it became a classified document held by the Ministry of Defense. The image has since been declassified, of course, and is now available for public viewing, but there is still a lot of mystery surrounding the photo as well as the photographer, as his identity, along with any other information regarding the incident, is pretty much non-existent. I mean, come on, it's a giant glowing light in the sky. You're really telling me no one else saw this and that there's no other information out there other than the fact that the photo exists? Oh yeah, and not only that, but it was deemed classified by the British Ministry of Defense, so I'm thinking there's something else going on here. Okay, I bet you didn't know that another major hotbed for extraterrestrial, UFO, and unidentified aerial phenomenon activity was Brazil. I mean, I did, but maybe you didn't. In fact, this kind of thing is so popular in Brazil that they have an annual day of recognition for these sightings known as the Night of the UFO, which came to be after a major event took place in 1986. On the night of May 19th, a series of unidentified flying objects were seen in the skies of Brazil, and even more non-visual objects were detected via radar across the skies of 4 Brazilian states. Of course, at this time, any and all knowledge the government had on the event was extremely classified. In May of 2012, however, Brazil's Freedom of Information Act went into place, after which the public demanded the release of all the documents relating to the incident. The government complied, and not only released written documents of the events, but also a series of photographs depicting strange activity within the skies above Brazil. Although the images of what appeared to be nothing more than squiggles and clouds of smoke didn't provide much clarity, a statement made by the Minister of Aeronautics did. He said, "This command is of the opinion that the phenomena are solid and reflect, in a certain way, intelligence, due to the ability to follow and maintain a distance from observers, as well as to fly information." After this statement was made, the Brazilian government has still not been able to confirm exactly what took place the night of the UFOs was born. Next, we have a photo taken in 1990 by two Scottish chefs who were working in a hotel near the area in which the photograph was taken. After a long day of work, it appears the two men had decided to take a hike in an attempt to blow off some steam. While this walk wouldn't end up being incredibly relaxing, it would be wildly exciting, as not long after the two men had set off on their journey along the Calvine Scottish countryside, they noticed something hovering above them in the sky. The object was not one that either of the men could identify, and so they pulled out their cameras in an attempt to document the 100-foot flying aircraft instead. The photos, which have been analyzed and show no signs of manipulation, capture the object being circled by a jet plane. They thought the incident was incredibly strange and even newsworthy, so the two turned the footage over to the local newspaper for publication. But the images were seized by the British Ministry of Defence and were never released. Until 32 years later, that is, by David Clark, who, unbeknownst to the ministry, had kept a photocopy of one of the original images. The identity of the two men was never revealed, nor did they ever come forward to share their story after the images had been seized by the ministry, begging the question of what exactly they saw and what exactly the government was trying to cover up. A photograph taken of an unidentified aircraft lit up by military spotlights in Los Angeles, California, is next on the list. The photograph, which documents an event so big it later became referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, was taken on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. On the night the photo was taken, all of Los Angeles was under blackout, as directed by the US military. While the lights on the ground had been turned off, the sky above had been lit up by a myriad of strange objects. The military opened fire, and onlookers stood absolutely stunned as 1,400 rounds of ammunition appeared to have no effect on the unidentified flying object. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found in the sky or on the ground. Shrapnel that appeared to have ricocheted off the target resulted in the death of 5 civilians. Furthermore, 3 were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more of heart attacks due to the stress of the 2-hour-long attack. And finally, we have a handful of screen grabs from a video taken by Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich whilst flying an 18F Super Hornet fighter jet over the Pacific Ocean near San Diego during a training mission for the United States Navy. The footage, taken in November of 2004, was captured after Dietrich was asked to investigate a suspicious object that had been seen dropping from 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean and then vanishing. When Alex and their colleague arrived on the scene, the ocean's surface, where the object had been reported, appeared as though it was boiling. Moments after arriving to investigate, a strange, elongated white object came into view and was captured on video hovering above the water before it disappeared into the sky at an impossible speed, leaving no wake in the oceans below. While the footage has been confirmed to be authentic by the United States Department of Defense, the object itself, along with its origins, remains a mystery. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. That's our video for today. I've been your host, Hannah Thompson, and I'll see you in the next one.
Discover America's most haunted cities. Haunted American cities that you might be living in. Check out the video now to find out more. You'll be sure to thank us later when you find out you live in the most haunted city in America.